Okay, I just got off work a little while ago. This is like my third try to figure out how to tell this, but pretty much I've been getting these signs to tell my story, so this is the way I chose to do it. I hope you can find something in my story that will help you in yours. So we'll just try to be real simple. I was born in 2002 in Pueblo, Colorado. For those who don't know, Pueblo is what most people who are from Colorado or who have stayed in Colorado for an extensive period of time would call the sketchiest city out here. Maybe the most terrible place to live, and there's a few people, especially ones from Pueblo, who will say either it's not too bad or that they love it. And you know what? I respect it because I love where I'm from. But it was not the best place to grow up. I mean, I have memories of my mom telling me and my younger siblings, or me and my little sister, when we were real young, like, the normal stuff that moms tell their kids, like, hey, don't talk to strangers. If someone gives you candy, check if there's a razor in it on Halloween, stuff like that. But then there was other stuff like, hey, if you see a needle at the park in the grass on the playground, come get me. Don't pick it up. Don't touch it. If you see a balloon on the ground in the park, don't pick it up. Don't touch it. If you hear these loud sounds, these loud pop sounds, make sure you can see everyone. Come. If we're out and about, you need to come get me. There was a million ways to get into trouble out there, and not just, trouble that you caused. It could be nothing that you had to do with, man. It was a little rough. People in that town, it was blue collar. There's a steel mill there, so all them fumes blowing over, driving people crazy. People don't have a lot of money. There's not a lot of money in the city to be had, so that leads to some crazy stuff happening. Crazy people come from crazy stuff happening, at least. That's how I feel. And I was a different kid. I always wanted to be different, but I grew up different. My parents were 18 and 20 when I was born. They were real young. Trying to figure life out with a child at that age is quite a task. It's a challenge, man. For me, I never really even registered being them together because it just didn't work out there. I think, honestly, me being born, or maybe my sister 2 years later, is what encouraged them to try to be married and make a family like that, but they came from two different worlds. So when I was 3 years old, a year after my sister was born, they split ways, and I never really known life any different than having two completely separate families. I mean, you gotta think about it. Like, on one hand, on my dad's side, we have this black family with deep South roots from Missouri, Arkansas, to Texas and Oklahoma to Colorado now, where they are, this isn't a predominantly black community by any means. Everyone who lives here is Italian, Latino, white, and there might be 15 black people in the, no, it's got 100,000 people there. I'm sure there's well over 2,000 black people, but it's not a lot, okay? So they're trying to figure out where they fit in this community and doing it without a lot of money. My granny was a school teacher. My granddad worked at a manufacturing plant, used to be in the military. So they raised 3 generations of kids, including my generation, pretty much from the same house for a long time. And they've been together a long time. On my mom's side of the family, you have a family that did also come from a very, at least claim to come from, a very not so financially blessed upbringing. There was times my mom's mom, we call her Nana, she used to tell me about how they lived in a trailer park in Florida for many years before her father finally figured out how to make that paper, and they ended up, by the time I was being born, owning several of Burger Kings down in P-Town, baby. Though I don't know what happened to that money today. I know that those franchises were sold, and now I have two sides of a family where one could be considered pretty much the opposite of the other, especially with, like, one being more conservative and one just going through enough shit to where it's like, we can't even afford to be so judgmental. Even though they still were. Everybody's stubborn though in my family. That was the thing that was the same. So, my parents are figuring it out. They split apart, which means we're spending all our time with my mom and seeing my dad every so often, and that can hurt as a kid. A lot of people understand that. My pops has been here for me in more ways than I could ever have asked him to, especially later on in my life when he got his shit together pretty much. I know there's people out there who never had a father, so I can't be more grateful for that. You know what I'm saying? Or I will be more grateful for that. But it took a toll. You move 20 times before you're 16 years old. You learn to adapt and to change, but you also lose a little bit of your identity. And considering the white-black mix, some would say I would have lost the identity at birth. So, yeah, it was a little bit tough. It gave me a lot of skills, though. As a kid, I had to learn how to make friends quickly, and the way I found to do that was be a class clown, man. Like, I was always trying to either be the butt of the joke or make a joke about someone else, and as much as it did make me friends, it also kind of hid who I really was from everyone else, because, quite frankly, I was afraid of them finding out that I didn't know who I was, not even a little bit. I spent so much time around so many different people that it was difficult for me to even pin that down till I got older and out on my own. But I was a handful for sure. The words ADHD and autism and OCD and all these different neurodivergencies, we'll call them, get thrown around a lot. But man, there were few things that could hold my attention for a long time, and school was definitely not one of them. I did love to read, because at a young age, we didn't always have cable. We did at times, and I wasn't always at least allowed to play video games, and it was definitely monitored for most of my life until I became an adult. So reading was like my escape. Kids, they play video games, they'll go out and play with the neighborhood kids, or they'll do different things to escape, but I always lived in different neighborhoods, and a lot of them sometimes didn't even have any other kids there that I knew of. So we just learned, might as well spend time inside, because we won't really get to see the outside kids again, even if we do make friends with them. Or, playing video games was so regulated, I was just like, you know what, I'll read these books. And I like fiction books, the stories, the great tales, the fantasies behind them. I could see these people turn from terrible circumstances into these great, amazing beings and representations of power and success. And I fell in love with it early on, but it helped me with the ability to retain information, and it made school easy for me, but it became a problem because it was easy enough for me that I just was distracted all the time. I couldn't really pay attention in class, I'm sure I used to think I was a good kid, but in all reality, I was a handful. I did a lot of stuff in class. When I was in 6th grade, I made wine in my backpack because I didn't have anything better to do, and I was also paying attention to the adults maybe a little too much. But that's besides the point, man. So, I grew up with a lot of tools to be successful, but I also grew up with the disadvantage of not knowing who I was or who I was supposed to be or who I even really wanted to be until I got a lot older. And not just in a sense like, oh, do you want to be an engineer? It's more so in a sense like I couldn't figure out what my base personality, like I didn't know who Sayer was. So naturally, I bounce around until I find a spot where I can fit in with the other kids, because my home is my granny's house. But that makes me a little strange because I'm hanging around with these people. My great grandmother, she's 80 something years old when I was born, maybe late 70s. Born in the 1920s, that's a whole different world from the kids that I'm meeting. Now we got landlines and flip phones and cable TV and all these different cultural icons and references, and these other kids, they're going home to the same things over and over. Even if they're not in the best conditions, they still got the same friends in their neighborhoods, and the same